The obsidian spire had stood sealed for 300 years. Tonight, under a blood-red moon, the High Council had gathered to witness its opening. Saren pressed herself against the cold stone wall of the ceremonial chamber, trying to become invisible. It wasn't difficult. She'd spent her entire 23 years perfecting the art of not being seen. Her dark hair hung loose around her shoulders, as unremarkable as the rest of her. In a world where every wolf bore a soul mark from birth, a sacred brand that declared their rank, their worth, their place in the hierarchy, she was blank, unmarked. Nothing. "Move aside, Markless!" A sharp elbow caught her ribs as Lord Valdrick's attendant shoved past. The woman didn't even glance at Saren. Why would she? Looking at a Markless was considered bad luck, like staring at an empty grave. Saren swallowed her pain and shifted further into the shadows, her eyes fixed on the center of the chamber, where the midnight reliquary waited. The vault was terrifying and beautiful all at once. Black iron bands wrapped around a coffin-shaped container of dark crystal, and within that crystal, Saren could see the outline of a figure. A man. No, not just a man. Even through the distorted glass, she could sense the power radiating from him. Ancient and terrible and vast. 3 centuries ago, the traitor king Kyle Vareth was sealed within this reliquary by his own bloodline. High Priestess Arena's voice echoed through the chamber. His power was too great to destroy, so it was contained, imprisoned, forgotten. Saren's chest tightened. She had heard the stories, of course. Everyone had. The Alpha King who had united the 7 packs under one rule. The warrior whose howl could shatter stone. The monster whose bloodlust had, supposedly, driven him to madness. But as Saren stared at the frozen figure within the crystal, she didn't see a monster. She saw stillness, patience, and something else, something that looked almost like sorrow. "Tonight, we attempt what 12 generations have failed to accomplish," Orena continued. "We will drain the traitor's power and distribute it among the worthy." A murmur of approval rippled through the assembled nobles. Lord Valdrick stood at the front, his silver soul mark gleaming on his throat, the mark of a prime alpha, second only to a true king. His amber eyes glittered with hunger. "Begin the extraction," Valdrick commanded. 6 marked wolves stepped forward, each bearing the brands of elemental power. They placed their hands on the reliquary and began to chant. Light flared beneath their palms. The iron bands groaned. Nothing happened. The chanting grew, louder, more desperate. Sweat beaded on the wolves' foreheads. One by one, they were thrown backward, as if struck by invisible hands, crying out in pain. "It resists," one gasped. "The seal, it's stronger than we anticipated." Valdrick's expression darkened. "Try again. Use more power, my lord." "We cannot. The reliquary only responds to—" The wolf hesitated. "2. Blankness. 2. Absence. Our marks interfere with the mechanism." Silence fell over the chamber. Saren felt the weight of it pressing down on her chest. Then Valdrick smiled, and her blood turned to ice. "Blankness," he repeated, softly. His eyes swept the room until they found her, cowering in the shadows. "How fortunate that we have such a creature among us." "No." The word escaped Saren before she could stop it. "Please, my lord, Bring her." Rough hands seized her arms and dragged her forward. Saren struggled, but she was small, weak, unmated, powerless in every way that mattered. The crowd parted before her, like she carried disease. "Touch the reliquary," Valdrick ordered. Saren stared at the dark crystal, at the frozen king within. Up close, she could see his face now. Sharp features, strong jaw, dark hair that fell across a furrowed brow. He looked like he was dreaming, or perhaps like he was trapped in an endless nightmare. "I can't," she whispered. "I don't know what will happen." "That's not your concern." Valdrick's voice hardened. "Touch it, Markless. Open what has been sealed, or I will have your sister Neve brought here, and we will discover whether she screams as prettily as she sings." The threat struck Saren like a physical blow. Neve, her little sister, Only 12 years old. The one person in the world who looked at Saren like she mattered. Saren stopped struggling. Don't hurt her, she breathed. I'll do it. I'll do whatever you want. She approached the reliquary on trembling legs. The crystal was cold beneath her fingertips, so cold it burned. But beneath the cold, she felt something else. A pulse, a heartbeat that wasn't her own. The moment her palm pressed flat against the surface, the world exploded. Light blinding, searing, and white erupted from the reliquary. The iron bands shattered. The crystal cracked, and through the chaos, Saren heard a voice inside her mind, ancient and broken and desperately grateful. Finally, someone heard me. The crystal fell away like shed skin, and the Alpha King opened his eyes. They were gold, pure, molten gold, like staring into the heart of the sun, and they were fixed directly on her. Saren tried to step back, but she couldn't move. Something was happening, something was connecting. She felt him, pouring into her mind. 300 years of darkness, of isolation, of screaming into a void where no one answered. The loneliness was so vast it nearly broke her, and he felt her too. She knew it. He was experiencing her lifetime of shame, of being invisible, of being told she was worthless, empty, cursed. Two souls drowning in different oceans, suddenly finding each other. You, his voice echoed in her mind. You are the one. What's happening? Someone shouted. Why isn't he contained? The Alpha King rose from the shattered reliquary, and even weakened. Even after 3 centuries of, quote, imprisonment, his presence filled the chamber like a thunderstorm. The nobles scrambled backward. Guards drew their weapons, but Kael Vareth didn't look at any of them. He looked only at Saren, and then he collapsed, his massive body crumpling to the stone floor, and Saren felt his pain, his exhaustion, his fading consciousness, as if it were her own. Seize him, Valdric roared. Chain him before he recovers. Saren didn't think. She simply moved, throwing herself between the fallen king and the approaching guards. Her arms spread wide. Don't touch him. The words came out, stronger than she'd ever spoken in her life. The guards hesitated, confused by this strange, blank-faced woman defending the most dangerous creature in their history. Valdric laughed. Step aside, Markless. You've served your purpose. But Saren didn't move. She could feel Kael's heartbeat inside, her chest growing weaker with each passing second. Whatever had happened when she touched the reliquary, they were connected now, bound in ways she didn't understand. And if he died, something told her she would die too. The dungeon they threw them into was carved from the same black stone as the Spire itself. No windows, no light except for the faint phosphorescent moss that clung to the walls. Saren had been given no explanation, no trial, no opportunity to speak. One moment she was standing over the fallen king. The next, guards were dragging them both into darkness. They had chained Kael to the far wall, iron shackles around his wrists and ankles. The chains were etched with binding runes, ancient magic designed to suppress a wolf's power. They shouldn't have been necessary. In his current state, the Alpha King couldn't have threatened anyone. Saren crouched in the opposite corner, unchained, but just as trapped. Her body ached from the rough handling, but that pain was nothing compared to the strange, hollow sensation in her chest. She could still feel him. Even unconscious, even barely alive, his presence flickered inside her like a candle in a storm. What did you do? To me? She thought, staring at his motionless form. What did I do to you? Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time moved strangely in the dark. Finally, the Alpha King stirred. It started with his fingers, a twitch, then a slow curl. Then his head lifted, and those golden eyes opened again, dimmer now, but still burning with an inner fire. He scanned the cell with the alertness of a predator, assessing threats, cataloging exits. When his gaze found Saren, he went completely still. She held her breath. He spoke. His voice was rough from centuries of disuse, the words halting and thick with an accent she didn't recognize. You opened the seal. Saren nodded, unable to find her voice. How? He struggled to sit up, the chains clanking against stone. No one could open it. I made certain, only someone without. He stopped. His eyes dropped to her throat, to the smooth, unmarked skin, where a soul brand should have been. You have no mark. No. The word came out as barely a whisper. I was born without one. Something shifted in his expression. Not pity, she was used to pity, but recognition. Understanding. They called it a curse, he said quietly. But it isn't. Your blankness. It's a key. The only key that could have freed me. Saren wrapped her arms around herself. I didn't mean to free you. Lord Valdric forced me. He threatened my sister, Valdric. The name came out like a growl. That name. I know that bloodline. They were the ones who betrayed me. Before Saren could respond, footsteps echoed in the corridor above. Multiple sets. Growing closer, Kale's weakened body tensed. They're coming. What do we do? He looked at her, really looked at her, and Saren felt that strange connection pulse between them like a second heartbeat. When I touched your mind, he said slowly, I felt something. A gift. Hidden, buried, but powerful. Saren shook her head. I don't have any gifts. I'm markless. I'm nothing. You freed me, he said. You are not nothing. The dungeon door groaned open. Torchlight flooded the cell, and Lord Valdric descended the stairs with 6 armed guards at his back. The council has decided, Valdric announced, his voice dripping with false regret. The traitor king will be executed at dawn. His power will be extracted and divided among the marked nobles. His eyes slid to Saren. As for you, little key, we'll find other reliquaries for you to open, other doors that need unlocking. You should be grateful. For the first time in your worthless life, you're useful. Saren's hands clenched at her sides. She is not your tool, Kale said, his voice low and dangerous despite his weakness. Valdric laughed. You're chained to a wall, traitor. You're in no position to protect anyone. He gestured to the guards. Double the watch. The extraction begins at sunrise. As the dungeon door slammed shut, plunging them back into darkness, Saren realized her cheeks were wet with tears she didn't remember crying. He's going to kill you, she whispered. Yes, and then he's going to use me forever. Not if we escape. Saren laughed bitterly. You can barely sit up. I have no power. How exactly do you propose we escape? Kale's golden eyes found hers in the darkness, and despite everything, despite the chains, the dungeon, the death sentence, she saw no fear in them, only certainty. I told you, he said. You have a gift. You just don't know it yet. He lifted his bound hands toward her. Come here. Let me show you. Saren didn't move. Every instinct she'd developed, over 23 years of surviving at the bottom of the pack hierarchy, screamed at her to stay small, stay invisible, stay away from danger. And Kyle Vareth was danger incarnate. I won't hurt you. His voice softened, rough edges smoothing into something almost gentle. I couldn't, even if I wanted to. The bond won't allow it. What bond? When you opened the reliquary, when our minds touched. He paused, searching for words. In my time, we called it a soul binding. Your essence poured into me. Mine poured into you. We're connected now. 2 threads woven into one cord. Saren's hand flew to her chest, where that strange second heartbeat still pulsed. I can feel you, she admitted. Inside me. I thought I was going mad. You're not mad. You're bound. His eyes held hers. Bound to me. The words should have terrified her. Instead, they settled into her bones like a truth she'd always known. Slowly, against every rational thought, Saren crossed the cell and knelt before him. What do I do? Give me your hands. She placed her palms in his. His skin was ice cold, his grip weak but steady. The moment they touched, that connection between them flared like a flame. catching oxygen. Saren gasped. She could feel him now, not just his presence, but his memories. Fragments tumbled through her mind like leaves in a storm. A throne room filled with wolves bowing in respect. A woman with silver hair who might have been his mother. Blood on his hands that wasn't his own. Betrayal. Screaming. Darkness. 300 years of darkness. Focus. Kale's voice anchored her. Don't get lost in the past. Stay with me. Stay here. Saren forced her eyes open, forced herself to see the present, the cell, the chains, the man before her. Good, he murmured. Now, reach, deeper. Past my memories, past my pain. Find the place where our souls meet. She tried. She pushed through the chaos of his mind, searching for something solid, something shared. And then, there, a space that was neither his nor hers, but theirs. A room with no walls, filled with silver light. In that space, she felt whole in a way she never had. The hollow ache of being Markless vanished. She wasn't empty here. She was full. You feel it, Kale breathed. The bond space. This is where our power lives. I don't have power, Saren whispered, even as the silver light pulsed around her. You have the rarest power of all. His grip tightened on her hands. You are a vessel. A markless wolf can hold any gift, absorb any ability. Your blankness isn't emptiness, it's infinite potential. The other wolves have one mark, one power. You can hold them all. Saren's mind reeled. That's impossible, is it? 300 years ago, I was the most powerful alpha in history. When they sealed me, they tried to drain my strength, but I hid it. I buried it so deep that no marked wolf could ever find it. His golden eyes blazed. But you found me. Your emptiness reached into the precious darkness where I'd hidden, and you pulled me back into the light. The silver space around them began to shift. Saren watched in wonder as threads of golden light, Kale's power, drifted toward her, seeking her emptiness like water seeking a valley. What's happening? I'm giving you a piece of myself, Kale said. Enough to save us both. When dawn comes, you'll have the power to break these chains. I can't. You can! His voice was fierce. You are the key, Saren. Not just to my prison, but to everything they've tried to lock away. You are what they fear most, a wolf with no limits. The golden threads touched her chest, and Saren screamed. Power unlike anything she'd ever imagined flooded through her veins. It was too much. Too fast. Her body wasn't built for this. Her unmarked flesh wasn't designed to hold such force. She felt her bones creaking, her blood boiling, her mind fracturing, and then Kale's forehead pressed against hers. Breathe, he commanded. Let it settle. Don't fight it. His presence wrapped around her in the bond space, steadying her, guiding her. The wild power began to calm, finding pockets within her to rest, integrating itself into her being. When it was over, Saren collapsed against him, trembling and exhausted. What did you do to me? She whispered. Kale's hand came up to cradle the back of her head, a gesture so tender it made her throat tighten. I made you dangerous, he said softly. Dangerous enough to survive what's coming. Saren lifted her head to look at him and froze. His golden eyes were flickering, dimming like dying embers. His face had gone gray. The transfer had cost him something. Something vital. You're dying, she breathed. Not yet, but his voice was barely a whisper. Not if you do exactly what I tell you when the sun rises. Above them, through layers of stone, a horn sounded. Dawn had come. The guards came with torches and silver-tipped spears. Saren scrambled to her feet as the dungeon door burst open. 6 wolves descended the stairs, their soul marks glowing with borrowed aggression. Behind them, Lord Valdrick watched with cold anticipation. Bring the traitor, he commanded. The extraction altar is prepared. 2 guards moved toward Kale, who had slumped against the wall, barely conscious. The power transfer had left him hollowed out, a shell of the king he'd once been. He couldn't fight. He couldn't even stand, but Saren could. Instinct took over. She stepped between KL and the approaching guards, just as she had in the ceremonial chamber. Only this time, something was different. This time, she felt the borrowed power thrumming beneath her skin, golden and fierce and hungry for release. "Move aside, Markless," the lead guard sneered. "Don't make this harder than—" Saren raised her hand. She didn't know what she was doing. Instinct guided her, or perhaps Kale's power knew its own nature. Light erupted from her palm, not the gentle glow she'd experienced in the bond space, but a concentrated beam of force that struck the guard square in the chest and sent him flying into the far wall. Silence. Every wolf in the dungeon stared at her with identical expressions of shock. Saren stared at her own hand, trembling. "Did I do that?" "Yes," Kale's voice whispered through their bond. "Now do it again." The guards recovered quickly, advancing with weapons raised. Saren acted on instinct, pulling at the golden threads inside her and releasing them in wild bursts. One guard dropped as invisible force crushed him to the ground. Another was thrown sideways into his companion. The air crackled with energy she didn't understand but somehow controlled. "Impossible," Valdrick breathed. "She's channeling his power. That's impossible." But it wasn't impossible. It was happening. Saren felt the chains binding KL as if they were wrapped around her own wrists. She reached for them with her new senses, found the weak points in the binding runes, and pulled. The iron shattered. Kale fell forward, free for the first time in 3 centuries from any restraint. Saren caught him, staggering under his weight, but refusing to let him fall. "We need to Aspiriant." "Move," she gasped. He nodded weakly against her shoulder. "The Eastern Passage. There's a way out through the old catacombs. I remember." Saren half carried, half dragged him toward the stairs, stepping over the groaning guards. Lord Valdrick had retreated, shouting for reinforcements, but Saren didn't care. All that mattered was getting Kale out, getting them both out. The catacombs were exactly where Kale's fragmented memories had promised. Ancient tunnels carved into the mountain's heart, forgotten by everyone except a king who had walked these halls 300 years ago. They emerged into pale morning light on a cliff overlooking the Thornwood Valley. The obsidian spire rose behind them like a black needle piercing the sky, already swarming with wolves searching for their escaped prisoners. "They'll track us," Saren panted, lowering Kale onto a moss-covered boulder. "They'll follow our scent." "The river." Kale pointed toward a ribbon of silver winding through the valley below. "Water masks the trail." Saren studied him carefully. His golden eyes had faded to a dull amber. His skin was gray, his breathing shallow. The power he'd given her had come at a terrible cost. "Can you make it that far?" He smiled, and despite everything, it transformed his face into something almost beautiful. "I've survived 300 years of imprisonment. I can survive a walk to the river." He couldn't. Halfway down the cliff path, his legs gave out. Saren caught him before he could tumble over the edge, her muscles screaming with effort. He was so much larger than her, so much heavier, and yet she refused to let go. "Leave me," he rasped. "No." "Saren, I said no." She adjusted her grip, pulling his arm more securely over her shoulders. "We're bound, remember? If you die, maybe I die too. So you don't get to give up." Something flickered in his fading eyes. Surprise, perhaps? Or wonder. "You're stronger than you know," he murmured. "I'm starting to figure that out." They reached the river as the sun climbed higher. Saren waded in up to her waist, gasping at the cold, pulling Kale along with her. The current tugged at their bodies, carrying away their scent, their tracks, their trail, when they finally collapsed on the opposite bank. Hidden beneath the drooping branches of an ancient willow, Saren allowed herself one moment of hope. They had escaped. Against all odds, they had actually escaped. But as she looked at Kale's still form beside her, his chest barely rising with each breath, she knew their fight was far from over. 3 days they hid in the Thornwood. Saren found an abandoned hunter's shelter in a ravine so deep that sunlight barely reached the bottom. She dragged Kale inside, built a fire from dried moss and fallen branches, and did everything she could think of to keep him alive. It wasn't enough. She wasn't a healer. She had no herbs, no medicines, no knowledge of how to treat a man who had given away pieces of his own soul. "Talk to me," she begged through their bond. "Tell me how to help you." But Kale's presence in her mind had grown distant, like a voice calling from the far side of a canyon. He drifted in and out of consciousness, sometimes lucid, mostly lost in fever dreams that bled through their connection. She experienced fragments of his memories without meaning to. A coronation where 7 alphas knelt before him. A woman named Lasara who had kissed him in a garden full of night-blooming flowers. Betrayal poison in his wine. Silver chains on his wrists. The first Lord Valdric, his own treacherous cousin, pressing a blade to his throat. "You were too powerful," the traitor had whispered. The bloodline had to be purified. Saren woke from these visions with tears on her cheeks and rage in her heart. On the 3rd night, Kale's fever broke. Saren was dozing by the fire when she felt him stir. She scrambled to his side, heart pounding, and found his golden eyes open and clear for the first time since their escape. "You stayed," he said. His voice was weak but present. "Of course I stayed. Where else would I go?" He reached up, his fingers brushing her cheek with impossible gentleness. "Anywhere, everywhere. You're free now. You don't owe me anything." Saren caught his hand before he could pull away. His skin was warm now, not burning with fever but simply alive. The touch sent a shiver through her that had nothing to do with cold. "You gave me your power," she said, quietly. "You nearly died to give me a chance. Why?" Kale was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his words were careful, measured. "When our souls touched in the Reliquary, I felt your entire life. Every moment you were ignored. Every time they called you cursed, worthless, empty." His jaw tightened. "They were wrong. All of them. I knew it the instant I felt you. Your soul isn't empty, Saren. It's vast. It's infinite. They just couldn't see it because they were too busy looking for marks." Saren's throat constricted. No one had ever spoken to her like this. No one had ever seen her like this. "In my time," Kale continued, "wolves like you were considered sacred, blank vessels, living reliquaries. They said a markless wolf could hold the power of an entire pack, could bond with any alpha regardless of rank." His eyes found hers in the firelight. "They said a markless wolf was the only one who could truly complete a king." The words hung between them, heavy with implication. "What are you saying?" Saren whispered. Kale's hand tightened around hers. "I'm saying that what happened between us in that dungeon, the transfer, the bond, it wasn't just survival. It was something older, something I thought was lost forever." Before Saren could respond, a howl split the night. They both froze. The sound came from the north, echoing through the ravine. Then another howl answered from the east, and another from the west. "They've found us," Saren breathed. Kale struggled to sit up, his face grim. "Valdric's hunters. They must have picked up our trail beyond the river. What do we do?" He looked at her, and in his eyes she saw something that made her heart crack. Resignation. "You run," he said quietly, "south toward the unmarked territories. Valdric's authority doesn't extend there. You'll be safe. What about you?" "I'll lead them away. Buy you time." "No." Saren gripped his shoulders. "No, I'm not leaving you. We're bound, remember? We stay together." "Saren." His voice was tender and terrible all at once. "I'm still too weak to run. If you stay with me, they'll capture us both. Valdric will execute me and enslave you. Everything we fought for will be lost." "I don't care." "I care." He cupped her face in his hands, forcing her to meet his eyes. "I have lived for 300 years in darkness, alone, forgotten, and then you came. You reached into my prison and pulled me back into the light. You gave me hope, Saren. Real hope. For the first time in centuries." His thumb traced her cheekbone. wiping away tears she hadn't realized she was shedding. "Let me protect that hope," he said. "Let me protect you." The howls were growing closer. "I'll find you," Saren choked out. "When I'm stronger, when I understand this power, I'll come back for you. I know you will." He pressed his forehead to hers, and through their bond, she felt his absolute faith in her, his belief that she was more than she had ever imagined herself to be. "Go, my soul, go, and survive." He kissed her. It was brief, desperate, tasting of salt and sorrow. Saren felt the bond between them stretch like a thread of gold as she backed toward the shelter's entrance. Then she turned and ran into the night. Behind her, she heard Kale's howl rise, not a cry for help, but a challenge. A king declaring himself to his enemies, drawing them away from what mattered most. Saren ran until her lungs burned and her legs gave out. She collapsed in a hollow beneath a fallen oak, pressing her hand to her chest where that second heartbeat still pulsed. Fainter now but present. "I'll find you," she swore silently. "I'll find you, and I'll bring you home." 1 month, 30 days of hiding in the unmarked territories. That lawless stretch of wilderness where packless wolves and human outcasts scraped out survival beyond the reach of noble bloodlines. 30 days of sleeping in caves and abandoned ruins, of eating whatever she could catch or forage, of jumping at every shadow. 30 days of feeling Kale's presence in her mind grow fainter and fainter until some morning she wasn't sure if the bond was still there at all. Saren had changed. She saw it in her reflection when she drank from streams. Her eyes, once brown and unremarkable, now held flecks of gold. Her body, always thin from years of poor treatment, had filled out with lean muscle she'd never possessed before. And sometimes, in moments of strong emotion, she felt something stirring beneath her skin, something wild that wanted to emerge. The dreams were the worst part. Every night, Kale came to her. Sometimes they were in the bond space, that silver room where their souls met. He would hold her and whisper words in an ancient tongue she somehow understood. Other times, the dreams were darker. She saw him chained in a dungeon, saw Valdric's wolves circling, and saw blood on stone floors. Are these visions real, she wondered, or am I going mad from loneliness? On the 31st day, her questions were answered. Saren was gathering roots near a creek. When the first wave of pain hit, it started in her bones, a deep, grinding ache, as if her skeleton was trying to reshape itself. She dropped to her knees, gasping, as the agony spread through her muscles, her joints, her very blood. Not again, she thought desperately. These episodes had been happening more frequently. The first time, she'd thought she was dying. By the 5th time, she'd realized it was something else entirely, something connected to the power Kale had given her, something her body was struggling to contain. This episode was different, stronger. The pain drove her flat, against the earth, her fingers clawing at dirt and stone. She felt her spine arching, her teeth lengthening, her senses exploding into overwhelming clarity. The shift, she realized with sudden horror. I'm trying to shift, but she couldn't. Markless wolves didn't shift. They didn't have the soul mark that triggered the transformation. She was stuck between forms, human and wolf, warring for control of the same body. When the pain finally released her, Saren lay trembling in the mud, tears streaming down her face. That night, the dream was different. She stood in a stone chamber she didn't recognize. Torches lined the walls. In the center, Kyle knelt in chains, his once powerful body broken and bloody. Lord Valdric stood over him, holding a silver blade. The extraction, Saren realized. They're finally doing it. Any last words, traitor? Valdric's voice echoed through the word. Dream. Kale lifted his head. Even beaten, even dying, his eyes still burned with defiance. She'll come for me, he said quietly. And when she does, everything you've built will burn. Valdric laughed. The Markless girl? She's dead by now, starved in the wilderness. If the wild wolves didn't get her first, You put your faith in nothing, traitor king. She's not nothing. Kale's voice was fierce despite his weakness. She's everything, and you're too blind to see it. The blade rose. Kale. Saren woke, screaming his name. She was on her feet before she fully registered consciousness, her heart pounding, her body still trembling from the failed shift. The dream had been too vivid, too real. Their bond had carried her into his mind. Let her witness what was happening across hundreds of miles. He's alive, she realized, but not for long. She had to go back, had to save him. But she was alone in the wilderness, half feral, unable to control the power inside her. What could she possibly do against Valdric and his army? The answer came from the trees. Saren? She spun, hands raised, borrowed power crackling at her fingertips. A young girl stepped out of the shadows. 12 years, old, silver blonde hair, wide eyes that Saren would recognize anywhere. Neve? The name came out as a sob. How did you? What are you? Her sister rushed into her arms, and for one precious moment, Saren forgot everything else. Neve was here. Neve was alive. Neve had found her. But when they finally pulled apart, Saren saw the fear in her sister's face. They're hunting you, Neve said urgently. Valdric's wolves. They tracked me here, hoping I'd lead them to you. Saren, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. A howl cut through the night. Close. Too close. Then another. And another. Saren looked up to see shadows moving between the trees. Dozens of them. Wolves with glowing soul marks and hunger in their eyes. They were surrounded. Saren pushed Neve behind her, golden power crackling between her fingers. The wolves emerged from the tree line in perfect formation, trained hunters, every one of them. At their head walked a woman Saren recognized from the ceremonial chamber, High Priestess Orena. Stand down, child. Orena's voice was calm, almost kind. We're not here to hurt you. Then why bring an army? Protection. The unmarked territories are dangerous. Orena stepped closer, her silver soul mark pulsing gently. We've been searching for you since you escaped. Not to capture you, to save you. Saren laughed bitterly. Save me? You stood beside Valdric while he forced me to open the Reliquary. You watched him threaten my sister. Pain flickered across Orena's face. I had no choice. Valdric controls the council through fear and manipulation. Those of us who oppose him must move carefully, or not at all. Why should I believe you? Because I knew your mother. The words hit Saren like a physical blow. Her mother had died giving birth to Neve, leaving behind only fragments of memory. A soft voice, gentle hands, the scent of wildflowers. Alara was my dearest friend, Orena continued quietly. She was markless, like you, and she was the most powerful wolf I ever knew. Saren's world tilted. My mother was. She had power? More than flang. You can imagine. Why do you think Valdric's bloodline has hunted markless wolves to near extinction? They fear what you can become. Orena extended her hand. Come with us, Saren. Let me show you the truth about what you are, what you're meant to be. Saren looked at Neve, who nodded slowly. Then, she looked at the assembled wolves, not with hunger in their eyes. She realized now, but with something else. Hope. Against every instinct, she took Orena's hand. They traveled through the night to a hidden sanctuary carved into the mountains. The Hollow. Orena called it a refuge for those who opposed Valdric's regime. Here, Saren learned truths that rewrote everything she'd believed about herself. The original Alpha Kings weren't born with marks, Orena explained as they sat in her private chamber. They were markless, every one of them. Blank vessels who could absorb and channel any power. The soul marks came later, diluted gifts passed down through bloodlines, growing weaker with each generation. But if markless wolves are so powerful, why are we treated like curses? Because 300 years ago, Valdric's ancestor realized the truth. A markless wolf, bonded to an Alpha King, would be unstoppable. So he sealed Kael Varith away and began systematically eliminating every markless wolf in the 7 territories. Orena's eyes were hard. Your mother hid her nature her entire life. She thought she could protect you and Neve by staying invisible. She was wrong. Saren absorbed this, her mind racing. The bond between me and Kael, what does it mean? Orena hesitated. It means you're his mate, his true mate, in the old way. When you opened the Reliquary, your souls recognized each other across 3 centuries of separation, but the bond feels incomplete, like something's missing. Because it is incomplete. Orena leaned forward. A soul bond must be sealed by both parties. Kael marked you when he gave you his power, but you haven't marked him in return. Until you do, the bond remains unstable. And so do you. That explained the failed shifts, Saren realized. The agonizing episodes where her body tried to transform but couldn't complete the change. She was caught between what she was and what she was becoming. The execution, Saren said suddenly. I saw it in a dream. Valdric is going to kill Kael at the blood moon, Orena finished grimly. 3 days from now. Valdric believes that killing an Alpha King under the blood moon will transfer Kael's power directly to him. Will it work? Possibly. The old magic is unpredictable. Orena met her eyes. But there's something Valdric doesn't know. The same blood moon that amplifies his ritual could also complete your transformation if you're willing to embrace what you truly are. Saren's heart pounded. What do I have to do? Stop fighting the shift. Let the wolf emerge. And then, Orena paused. Claim your mate before Valdric can kill him. The obsidian. Spire is a fortress. Even if I could transform, how would I get inside? Orena smiled for the first time. Leave that to us. We've been preparing for this moment for 300 years. That night, Saren sat alone on the sanctuary's highest balcony, staring at the moon. In 3 days, it would run red. In 3 days, everything would change. Can you hear me? She whispered through the bond. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then, faint as a distant star, Saren. Her heart cracked at the weakness in his voice. I'm coming for you, she promised. Hold on. Please, just hold on. Don't. Even through the bond, she could feel his fear, not for himself, but for her. It's too dangerous. Valdric will kill you. Then he'll have to try. She felt his presence pulse with something fierce and tender all at once. My stubborn, magnificent mate, he breathed. I don't deserve you. You deserve everything, Saren replied. And I'm going to make sure you get it. The bond flickered, his strength fading. But before he slipped away entirely, she felt one last emotion wash through their connection. Hope. The blood moon rose like a wound in the sky. Saren stood at the edge of the thornwood, staring at the obsidian spire in the distance. The fortress blazed with torchlight, and even from here, she could hear the drums of ceremony echoing across the valley. The ritual begins at midnight, Orena said beside her. You have 2 hours. Behind them, 100 wolves waited in the way. Shadows, rebels who had spent generations hiding, preparing, hoping for this moment. They would create a distraction, draw Valdric's forces away from the Spire's heart. But the final confrontation would be Saren's alone. Remember, Orena continued, the transformation will be agonizing. Your body has never shifted before. It will fight you every step of the way. I know. And if you fail, if you can't complete the shift, I won't fail. Saren turned to face her. I can't. Neve appeared, wrapping her thin arms around Saren's waist. Come back to me, she whispered. Promise, you'll come back. Saren kissed her sister's forehead. I promise. Then she ran. The rebel wolves howled behind her, their voices rising in a war cry that shook the valley. Saren heard answering howls from the Spire Valdric's forces responding to the threat. Good. Let them focus on the army at their gates. They wouldn't see her coming. She found the entrance to the old catacombs, exactly where Kael's memories had shown her. The tunnels were dark and twisting, but she navigated them by instinct, guided by the golden thread of the bond that pulled her toward her mate. The pain started when she was halfway through. It hit like lightning, driving her to her knees in the ancient stone passage. Her bones began to crack and reform, muscles tearing and rebuilding themselves in configurations that shouldn't have been possible. The wolf inside her, suppressed for 23 years, was finally demanding release. "Let go," Kale's voice whispered through the bond. "Stop fighting. Let it happen." "I can't," she gasped. "It hurts too much." "I know." His presence wrapped around her like an embrace. "But you are stronger than the pain. You are stronger than anything they ever told you. You are my mate, my soul, my everything. And I believe in you." Saren screamed. The sound started human and ended as something else entirely. She felt her spine elongate, her jaw reshape, her senses explode into terrifying clarity. Fur erupted along her skin, pure white, like fresh snow, like starlight, given form. When the transformation completed, she stood on 4 legs for the first time in her life. The world was different through wolf eyes, sharper, more vivid. She could smell Kale's blood from deep within the spire, could hear his weakening heartbeat, could feel his fading presence in her soul. She ran. The catacombs blurred around her as she raced through passages that would have taken a human hours to navigate. She was faster than she'd ever imagined, stronger, more powerful. The wolf wasn't a curse, it was liberation. She burst from the tunnels into the Spire's ceremonial chamber just as the clock struck midnight. The scene froze her blood. Kyle knelt on a raised altar at the chamber's center, chains binding his wrists and ankles. His body was covered in wounds, his golden eyes dim with exhaustion. Lord Valdric stood over him, a silver blade raised high, ancient, words of power spilling from his lips. Around them, dozens of noble wolves watched with hungry anticipation. "Stop!" Saren's howl shattered the ritual's momentum. Every head turned toward her, this impossible creature, this white wolf with eyes of burning gold, this markless Omega who should never have been able to shift at all. Valdric's face contorted with rage. "Kill her!" Wolves lunged. Saren met them without fear. She was smaller than the nobles, leaner, but she had something they didn't. Kale's power flowing through her veins, and a bond that made her unstoppable. She tore through them, like a tempest, white fur stained crimson, golden light erupting from her form with each strike. But there were too many. For every wolf she felled, 2 more took its place. Her strength was fading, her borrowed power burning out. She fell. A massive gray wolf pinned her to the ground, jaws closing around her throat. Saren struggled, but her limbs wouldn't respond. She had given everything, and it wasn't enough. "No," she thought desperately. "Not like this. Not when I'm so close." "Finish it!" Valdric screamed, raising the blade over Kale once more. And then Saren felt it a pulse through the kind bond, stronger than anything she'd experienced before. Kale's presence flooded her mind. Not weak and fading, but fierce and burning and alive. "You saved me once," his voice roared through their connection. "Now let me save you." Power exploded from the altar. The chains binding Kale shattered. The noble wolves were thrown backward by an invisible force. The gray wolf pinning Saren yelped and fled as golden light engulfed the chamber. Kale rose. He was transformed not into a wolf, but into something beyond. The Alpha King in his full glory, 3 centuries of suppressed power finally unleashed. His eyes blazed like twin suns, and when he roared, the very stones of the spire trembled. Valdric stumbled backward, terror replacing his arrogance. "Impossible! Your power was drained. You were dying." "I was," Kale agreed. His voice resonated with ancient authority. "But my mate gave me a reason to live." He extended his hand, and Valdric's body lifted into the air, suspended by pure will. The silver blade clattered to the floor. 300 years ago, your ancestor betrayed me. Kael said quietly. He poisoned me, chained me, and sealed me away to rot in darkness. He told the world I was a monster. His grip tightened, and Valdric gasped for air. He was wrong. But you threatened my mate. You hunted her. You tried to enslave her. Golden light gathered around Valdric's struggling form. That, Kael said, I cannot forgive. The light flared, and Lord Valdric ceased to exist. Silence fell over the chamber. The surviving nobles cowered against the walls, their soul marks flickering with submission. They had just witnessed the return of the Alpha King and the death of everything they had believed. Kael turned to Saren. She had shifted back to human form, without realizing it, lying naked and bloodied on the cold stone floor. But when his eyes found hers, she didn't feel shame. She felt complete. He crossed to her and knelt, gathering her into his arms with infinite gentleness. You came for me, he breathed. I promised I would. He pulled back, just enough to see her face, his golden eyes searching hers. The bond is still incomplete. You don't have to. Saren kissed him. It wasn't gentle. It was fierce and desperate and hungry, a claiming as much as a kiss. She poured everything into it, her fear, her hope, her absolute certainty that this man, this king, was hers. When they broke apart, both gasping, she pressed her forehead to his. I want to complete it, she whispered. I want to be yours, completely, forever. Saren, his voice cracked. You don't know what you're asking. To mark an Alpha King, to truly claim me, it will change you. There's no going back. I don't want to go back. She cupped his face in her hands. I spent my whole life being nothing, being invisible, being told I was cursed, empty, and worthless. And then I found you, and for the first time, I understood what I was really meant for. Tears slipped down Kael's cheeks. What were you meant for? This. She brushed her lips against his throat, feeling his pulse race beneath her mouth. You. Us. She bit down. The moment her teeth pierced his skin, the world exploded into golden light. She felt their souls crash together, not gently, not gradually, but with the force of two stars colliding. His memories became hers. His power became hers. His very essence wove itself into the fabric of her being, and she felt him experiencing her in the same way. Every moment of loneliness, every flash of hidden strength, every ember of defiance that had kept her alive in a world that wanted her dead. Mine, her soul declared. Yours, his soul answered. Always. Forever. In every life, in every world, until the stars burn out and the universe begins again. When the light faded, they remained locked in each other's arms, changed in ways neither fully understood. Saren's dark hair now held streaks of brilliant white. Kael's eyes, once purely golden, now contained flecks of silver. And on Saren's throat, where she had been markless her entire life, a new soul mark blazed, a crown of starlight wrapped around a crescent moon, the mark of the Alpha Queen. Around them, the surviving nobles fell to their knees, not in fear this time, but in recognition, in awe. What happens now? Saren whispered. Kael smiled, that devastating smile that transformed his face into something beautiful, and pressed his lips to her new mark. Now, my love, he murmured against her skin, we build a world where no one is ever called worthless again. Saren closed her eyes and let herself believe it. She was home. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this story. If you'd like to hear more tales of fated mates and supernatural romance, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Until next time, may you find your own soul bond waiting somewhere in the starlight.